Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Now, the episode that we have today, it's going to be revolving around the domain of digital marketing. So it's going to be very interesting to understand this new industry that I have no idea about. So I'm very keen on understanding about that. Our guest today is Peter Justin Yu. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Hussein.
So a quick profile on Peter. He describes himself as a digital storyteller and marketer. He has been working within the industry, within the tech industry and the digital marketing industry for almost 15 years now. Looking at his past experiences, I would almost say that he's a serial entrepreneur. He's had a number of entrepreneurial adventures along his 15 years, and that's something that we're really keen to find out about. Currently, he is the public relations advisor and the co-founder of BEBOP Asia. Now, this is a digital marketing agency, and we're going to get an idea of how he came about that. He has also been involved in a number of entrepreneurial programs, such as with Antler, with Campfire Collaborative Spaces. And I mean, I'll post a link to his LinkedIn in the description for this video just to read out his experience of over 15 years. It's going to take a separate amount of time just to cover all of that. But more than anything, what we have developed within this podcast is understanding the personal story that goes behind a person the way they are. And that is what fascinates me, finding out the background that shapes the person into the professional that they are today. Now, just before we dive into the conversation itself, I'd ask all of our listeners, if you enjoy the podcast, if you're enjoying the conversations, kindly take a second out of your time and hit that subscribe button. Also, you can see over here, we've got all of our short form content on all of these social media platforms. The videos are very shareable. They're very insightful. They're like bite-sized pieces of insights from every conversation that we've had so far. So if you enjoy it, do give that a view as well. Now, diving right in to the conversation, Peter, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you again for having me.
Yeah. Always a pleasure talking to somebody who's as senior in the industry as yourself. But like I said, what we're really fascinated about is finding out the person behind the professional title as well. So just start us off with a bit of your background, where you're from originally, and basically your early life up to like your graduation.
Yeah, sure. So a bit complicated. I am born in Taiwan.
Yep.
I grew up in Singapore. I am also British. And I did my undergrad in New York. I did my master's in Vancouver. Then I went to work in Shanghai. I worked in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And then here. So a little bit all over the place. I do have a couple of nationalities. So it's kind of like a little bit of everywhere, right? That's the globetrotter that my life has been.
In the truest sense.
Yeah, some by choice, some because my parents were also very much globetrotting themselves. We moved to a new country, started everything from scratch. So I'm a son of an immigrant who's also an immigrant himself. Yeah. So
like you said, globetrotter in the truest sense. Like you've lived in all different parts of the world. You've been exposed to all different cultures, coming from a rich cultural heritage from Taiwan itself, and living in Singapore, which is again a very diverse and very multicultural place for professionals, especially. Interesting. So, what's your basic education or your qualification? And has it always been in digital marketing, or like anything relevant to marketing or business?
I would say not really. Of course, as everybody would know, the jobs that we went to school for probably doesn't set you up entirely directly for the role for the future. So when I went to school, when I did my undergrads, I did it as a communications major. And my goal was that I wanted to be a journalist. I enjoyed writing. I did internships at the school paper. I did like an internship at my local town paper, the Buffalo News. So we had the chance to kind of write stories about local developments. And I thought it was real fun, real interesting. Until I found out how much journalists were getting paid. So I'm like, no, I'm good. I think there's going to be an issue. Yeah, there's going to be an issue. And
that's an unfortunate reality.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. So then I looked into the dark side. There was a course in my school that was actually taught on PR. And what we got to do on the flip side, instead of writing the stories, we were pitching the stories. And the professor was telling us every morning, Monday morning, we would send a box of Krispy Kreme, fresh coffee, to the writers.
Yeah.
You do that, your press release will be picked up. Your stories will have a chance to get to the forefront. And I thought it was real interesting. It's like building relationships. It's about it's still doing good work. It's still writing stories, still getting things to the forefront. But you have to be more easy. You must be more open to communicating. And I'm like, wow, that sounds like what I wanted to do, communications, but potentially more pay. I'm like, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, right. Interesting. This is where I find an overlap with this is as an engineer, I've mainly worked within pre-construction and contracts and basically tenders up to this point. And the overlap that you said, that you have to do the good work, but beyond that, it's also about building client relationships, understanding what the client wants and building that confidence of the client within your service. So and that's something, like you said, it's not something that any degree can teach you or any school can teach you. Yeah, it's something that you have to hone by yourself over time.
Yeah. Like back to what I said earlier is that when we went to school, like for example, the term, this is just to show a little bit about where I was. This is like 15 years ago. And more than that, it's even more than 15 years ago, is that the term SEO didn't exist then. Nobody understood. There's no such thing as a like SEO expert. Like nobody knows what that is, or it wasn't in the public forefront. People didn't think that was the case. So it is necessary to kind of to be in a arts degree that I was in to kind of turn my ability with language, ability to understand, and ability to integrate relationships to then bring into the modern world. So I would say I'm lucky in that way to have that flexibility, but then at the same time, I'm like, well, nobody could have foreseen where things are, so you take it as you go, right?
Interesting. Just for people who don't know, SEO stands for search engine optimization. It's currently it's a common practice in all digital marketing agencies that you need to have search engine optimization. We'll get Peter to explain exactly what that is, but in a little bit. So okay, so that's where you honed your ability and you discovered your passion for client management and managing stakeholders and stuff. So this was back in Buffalo, was it?
Yes, Buffalo, New York.
In Buffalo,
UB, Buffalo Soldier.
Nice one. So what year is this?
This is 2000, and I graduated in 2004, if I'm not wrong. So yes, almost 20 years ago. So you guys can do the math. Was it just for your university degree that you were in the US, or was your family over there as well? I was there by myself. So if I had a choice, I don't think upstate New York, Buffalo would be my choice of city. It is definitely cold. We have 2 meters of snow every other year. It kind of snows up to 2 meters. We have doors on the second floor for buildings just in case that happens, so you don't get snowed in. So if I had a choice, I would have chosen something sunnier. Yes.
Yeah. No wonder you're in Sydney now.
Definitely, yes. Nice and warm, feeling good. Yeah, that's it. Now my kids are complaining, where do we go to see snow? I'm like, I don't want to see that snow ever again. Yeah.
I've had enough snow for a lifetime.
Yeah, I've had enough.
Back in Buffalo. Yeah, maybe when they grow up, send them to the University of Buffalo.
They can go, they can explore, but I'm not going back. Not for that.
Right. So, to your personal, on the personal side of your story, so what kind of professions were your parents involved in? Like, what was the dinner table talk like during the time when you were growing up?
Yeah. My parents were both entrepreneurs, so it was kind of kind of in the blood, I would say. I grew up not just at the dining table, but as immigrant children would know, when your parents go to work, and if you are not in school, you are at work. This is true because my parents they had a electronics distribution company, and so they were doing relatively well. So I had a couple of shops around Singapore, and they were importing, exporting CPUs and RAM and hard disks back in the day in the late 90s, early 80s. And my job was to go answer calls, make deliveries, and I would say even to today, the business is still going. We tend to kind of our talk is still revolving around, how can we optimize? How do we improve what we do? In between, are you eating enough? Are you taking your supplements? Those kind of talk where it's something that we tend to kind of go into. So my mom was in that distribution of electronic goods. My dad moved into education, also started his own school, and things kind of continue. And he's now in e-commerce. So he's also a man with many hats and many talents. So trying to follow in some of the footsteps in the right moves where I can.
I see that that's a pattern I'm seeing in a lot of entrepreneurs that I'm talking to recently, that in one way or the other, they early on in their life, they had some kind of exposure to the entrepreneurial life. And you don't really realize it in the moment, but as you're growing up, there are certain skills that you subconsciously pick up.
Yeah.
Related to how a business is supposed to run. And that's something I found in myself. Like on the flip side, my background is that I've come from a family with all professionals, right? Very few people ventured out into doing business or entrepreneurship in my background. So it's something that we have always been averse to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. It's always interesting to find, people who have had a different experience to yours and seeing how that may have influenced their journey.
Yeah. Right. Interesting.
So you then went from the university. You were in Buffalo for 4 years.
No, I was there for 2.5.
2.5. You were in Buffalo.
The reason is because I grew up in Singapore, where the education system is a lot tougher than the American system. So when I got to Buffalo, and then they said you should take 12 credits a semester, and I said 12 credits, that takes 4 years to complete my undergraduate. How about if I do 30? And then he said, are you sure? I'm like, I'll give it a try. And so I sped through my 4 years in 2.5. Okay,
that's very impressive. Like you were in a hurry to get out.
It was just cold. It was just really cold. I was like, no, I gotta go.
You really did not enjoy the cold, did you?
No, I think for me cold was one thing, but that said, the hearts of the people I was with was really warm. So I really enjoyed my time there. It was just that the finances of it all, right? That was early 2000s. The US dollar was real strong compared to the Sing dollar. And I just thought I could help my parents save a lot more if I could just power through it. And as I said, it wasn't too hard, as in it was not easy. But at the same point, a lot of my fellow Singaporeans were there, other Chinese nationalities were there, or Chinese descendants were also there, and they were doing it too. So I'm like, okay,
I can do it as well.
I can do it as well, and still managed to do decently well. Graduated cum laude. I'm like, yeah. So almost, I was on the dean's list for a bit. So I'm like, I wasn't a really good student, but I was at least hardworking enough to kind of power through it.
Yeah, that's nice. You gave it a red hot crack, as they'd say in Australia. No, nice one. People coming from Asian backgrounds, or people coming from, like you said, in Singapore, where the education system is a lot tougher than what it is in the US. I see this with a lot of students, even from the subcontinent area, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Like a lot of the students over there, they are willing to take up more credits or more workload to get their stuff done earlier, just because they're used to it. Let's say the education system is kind of grinds you to the point that you become. I wouldn't say you become accustomed to it, but it's always difficult. But you kind of become comfortable with taking on more load and thriving under pressure, I say.
Yeah, I would say so. And but I would also kind of add to that is that my classes are a little bit more different than, let's say, if you were doing engineering course. I don't know if that's gonna be something that you can load yourself, or something like a math or a science degree. Whereas mine was an arts degree, so there's a lot of writing, a lot of I would say just a lot of elaboration on the same thing, and you can BS your way around it. So it's not that hard. I think there are some ways that you can work around that. But yeah, definitely, as Hussein, as you said, there is a culture where we are accustomed to working hard, which has its ups and downs. It does comes with a lot of stress. It does comes with
some childhood trauma.
Some childhood trauma for sure. As this podcast is on immigrants and probably immigrants, you would know. Yeah, I'm sure you would have been coerced into working harder with some physical encouragement. So. It's. I'm not saying that's the way it is, but not this how it should be. But you have been pushed to that point, and when you into a market where it's a little bit less difficult, you could thrive. You could actually see, oh wow, that was what my training was for me to crush it. So
yeah, I see in a lot of matters, the truth is always somewhere in the middle. So that coercion that you were talking about, okay, I mean, physical reprimand is always that's always wrong. I'd say
not recommending it.
Not recommending it.
But it has happened before, so just stating it. But yes.
Yeah. But I'd say the coercion by our families to push us to test our limits in terms of the workload that we can do. I mean, there's a fine line between healthy encouragement and an unhealthy one. But as far as it's healthy, as long as you're keeping those expectations closer to reality, and you're encouraging the child to actually do their best without any stress about achieving a certain result.
Yeah.
That is, I think, the best thing that you can teach your child, especially in this day and age.
Yeah.
Where people are a lot more sensitive to failing, or a lot more sensitive to comparisons between two individuals.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more it's a lot more ideal to instill that in your child, that they have a good self-esteem.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're also able to push themselves and test their limits and do as well as they can.
So I will show the video to my kids, two of them. So for Nicholas and Sophie, hi. So I would say to them, and how I would look at it, it's a different time from when we were growing up. Our parents had different, even harder times than we did. So I would say, like, the way to look at it is more like, I would be satisfied if my kids would do their best.
Exactly.
That's all. As in, I'm not looking at the end result, but if they're able to push themselves, get to where they can be, the best they can be, whatever that is, that's good enough.
That's all we demand out of, that we would demand out of our children. We also need to remember, parents from our generation should also understand that we should also have a certain level of empathy for our parents, because every person is a product of their times.
Yeah.
Like you said, they're a product of their times. They're a product of their circumstances. They would have had to carry a lot of emotional or childhood trauma of their own that was instilled into them.
Yeah.
And considering how fast the world was changing around the time that we were growing up, our parents would have had to deal with a lot the same way that we are, right? And it also comes down to, like, being in countries that are lower on resources, or where employment is not as fruitful as the first world nations. It also becomes a matter of survival. To a certain degree, that unless you push your child to be the absolute best in class, they will have a lesser of a chance to make it in their own life. So we need to have that level of empathy for our parents as well.
For sure. I remember my father would tell me that what he had for lunch at school was, he packed a bowl of plain porridge with one preserved carrot. That was lunch. And they always say, like, you see, look at this buffet spread I have for you right now. Do you know what I have for lunch? I was like, okay. Now I'm turning around and telling my kids, like, hey, you know what? Look at this really nice lunchbox that your parents make for you. Look at that. Do you know what I have when I grow up? Not as bad as what my parents had, but I definitely feel like they went through all that because they had a lot less when we were really blessed, and then the generations after gets probably more pampered, more like they get the things that we never thought we did, and that's what they wanted for us. And I think that is their language of love. It's like pushing us to be
the best,
excellent, to be the best. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
100% agreed. Coming back to your story now, so you've done your degree in record time from the University of Buffalo, right? And so where does Australia come in? How did you decide to move to Australia then? Or was there another stop in between before that?
Oh yeah, there was. So I finished my undergrad in about 2004, about there, and then moved back to Singapore, and then I started work. My first port of call was actually events. So was looking around for things and started working in events, doing nightlife events, doing brand launches, but physical, what Australia would call field marketing. Yeah. So that was what I got into and started my first company then, because I felt like, hey, instead of working with someone else, why don't I do it? I get to decide. I work with people I want to. And that was the first company I started with a few friends of mine. So we did nightlife, we did brand launches, we worked with concerts, we did conferences, and that was then. And what happened from there was I felt like there was still a gap in what I was able to do and what there was something that I need. And I did an MBA in 2008 that was in Vancouver. So went to University of British Columbia, Sauder Business School, and did my MBA there to kind of scale up even more.
So if I break that down, first off, the question that comes to my mind is that within that group of friends that you were doing this venture with, what was your role? What was your speciality that you were looking after?
I think it was, I won't even say I had a specialty back then, more just general management, just kind of like, being a little bit more of a level head, as in we had someone who was more creative. We had guys who were like, better at like photography or all that. And I think my skill set was just that I was like, a generalist that was able to kind of like, have a overview of what's going on. Like, to better have a better understanding of like, how to handle the many flying, like, parts and spinning plates at the same time.
Yep.
So that was kind of my role as a first-time founder in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And at what point did you realize that, okay, maybe I need to build on this with a degree, with a formal degree? Because with a job like this, the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Oh, yeah,
right?
true.
Right? You can't really replace experience with any degree. So at what point and how did you actually decide that, okay, I need to build on this with a degree, or I need to do, or was it just something that you just wanted a change and you just wanted to, let's just go to Canada for a bit?
I think there were...
Considering that you already hate the cold.
Canada's not too bad. It's not Toronto. So sorry for those who are from Toronto. I've been to Toronto and I don't like that either. Vancouver is a nice, balmy kind of like, winter. It does snow, but doesn't get that bad. Okay. It's like,
it's moderate.
It's moderate. So I would say not a really an issue. I really enjoyed my time there. What I did see was that I felt that I had a very generalist, or even worse than that, I had a very arts degree leading up to what I was doing. And I felt that there was a level that stopped me from stepping up, where I couldn't, I didn't have the credibility. I was seen to be young, which I was, because I finished my undergrads in
2 years early.
2.5 years. So 2 years early. So people are, how old are you? I'm like, doesn't really matter, does it? I shouldn't be judged because I happen to be younger at that point. But it was. I got into meetings. I got into board meetings. At one point, we were pitching the Singapore Tourism Board. And they were, I think there was a deal online that was a $1 million event overseas, and we put in a pitch for it. And I don't think we did a bad pitch. I do agree I probably wasn't experienced, of course, but one thing I was definitely marked down was when we did the presentation, they kind of remarked like, so how old are you? How old is this company? I'm like, why does this matter?
Yeah, it shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't. So my point is that I've been in enough meetings to have that question asked to me that I felt like, what I need at point is, I would like to say like, what does my age matter? I have a MBA.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was a bit of a pride thing, and I felt that would have put a full stop on all that. So applied for school, did my GMAT, wrote essays, compared prices and costs, and eventually I'm like, okay, a place that I don't mind spending a bit of time, Vancouver. So that's how I ended up there.
I'd like to add a comment on that fact that on one side you did well to finish your degree 2 years early, but the repercussion of that is now people actually think that you're not as experienced and you lack the knowledge.
Yeah, it was a product of that time. I don't think it's so much now. I think now with I know we're jumping in timelines, but let's say for example in this day and age, 2023, you don't need to have a formal education to prove that you can do the work. If you're, let's say, in in the tech world, if you're really good on in coding, you could be a 15-year-old genius. Is anybody going to say, oh wow, he's only 15, what does he know? I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. He can solve the problems. He can see the code that makes sense to that. So I feel like at that point in time, I wasn't able to convince people because of the times. Because of the time.
Okay. You could say you were almost a little early.
A bit early for my time. So if I was a little bit later than that, maybe. Yeah. But yeah, that was how that happened.
Yeah, true. Like you said, the mold's completely broken now. Like the cap on how young or how experienced you need to be, there's no cap on it anymore.
No, I don't think there's that issue. So I didn't get my say of how I wanted to do things, and so I thought maybe an advanced degree would be helpful. And even then, it was not straightforward because the same thing. When I was going for the interviews for my MBA, the couple of schools that wanted to have a chat with me did ask, "You are kind of young for doing this," and I'm like, "Why does it matter again?" And so it came down to two schools that actually wanted to offer me a place. One was in Singapore and one was in Vancouver, and I'm like, "I choose that one."
Yeah, just something a little further away from home.
A little further away from home, and also it adds a bit of experience. When I came back from New York to Singapore, I could say like, in my time in New York, I seen this, and like, okay, I could transport some of that, like, Western knowledge back home. So likewise, I thought doing Vancouver would be a good idea. And
yeah, for sure. And it's another country that you can tick off your list, basically. It's another experience. You look, no matter whether you intend to or not, even if you're going for a holiday, any new place that you visit, it teaches you a lot of stuff.
Yeah, sure.
That's one of the top tips that I can ever give to younger people, is that travel as far and wide as possible before life and commitments and responsibilities weigh you down.
Yeah, exactly.
Travel as far and wide as possible and collect as many adverse experiences as you can, because you don't really realize all the toughest times in your life are going to teach you more than any school book can.
Oh yes, definitely. So journey of 1,000 steps starts with the first one. So yeah, and I think we were talking about how I ended up in Canada, and I need to fast forward to Australia because this is about Australia. So I did an exchange program to Shanghai when I was in Vancouver. So I then did half my program in Shanghai, and then found my first corporate job at this was Bertelsmann Media Group, which is the BMG and what used to be Sony BMG. So yeah, I thought I wanted to be there into media, doing events, doing concerts, doing project management. I have an MBA now. I can talk like I know what I'm doing. And that was, 2008. Yeah, that was kind of probably the start of where that things led to where I am now today, because I got more exposed in a corporate setting, had a management consulting supervisor, and who I shall not name, but he definitely drilled into me like, the German standards of excellence.
Yep.
Yeah, and about how, like, I love to say the word is correct in German is genau, and genau means not just correct, exactly correct. So that the requirement to be exactly correct is how I was held to the standard in about the 2 years I was there. And I definitely learned a lot, got told off a lot, but, learned. And that's how I kind of like, get started into that world of how I bring my experiences into the role. Is not just correct, but exactly correct, technically correct. Must be precise. What the management consultant called it mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. You have to have every single idea you have that you can possibly put on the table, but yet at the same point it must be in nice, neat little buckets so that it allows you to organize. And never forgot that lesson till today.
No, it's very, very useful tip to remember. I'll remember that
Yeah.
one. Nice one. So at this point in time, when you're working in this role with the consulting company, is this where you start developing the idea of, okay, this is one niche or one territory that I have a certain amount of knowledge over, and is this when you start feeling like, okay, this is where I want to continue working, what I'm enjoying working as, and it's where you feel that you have developed a certain amount of expertise to offer, like when you say something, people listen?
So backtrack again. Bertelsmann Media Group is a media group. So my role was the project manager. So I think I've got it's like more like a jump start on working on multiple projects, working on many different ideas at the same point, because the group had a music publishing arm, there was a magazine arm, there was logistics even. So it led me to be more exposed to consultants. I was working for the general manager's office, so had to generally manage everything. And the idea for me to kind of really get started in kind of where my agency or my company is today was probably after that, when I left Shanghai, came back to Singapore, and then got into tech. This is early 2010s, where I got headhunted to work for a company that does really at the early days of cloud, of SaaS. It does email, website, and mobile phone data backup. Okay. Not the sexiest things in the world to write about, but the CEO then said like, hey, we needed somebody to do this. Headhunter gave me a call. I said, the interview, and he said, can you do this work? I'm like, I guess, sure. I've never done tech before. I've never seen it, but I have done PR. I've done digital marketing, got kind of thrown into the deep end. And that was my first foray in tech. And that was also when I started BEBOP as a side agency to consult for companies that are in the high growth tech industry. So when I got into this company is called DropSuite, used to be called Drop My Site. They were at early days. We went from 0 to 525,000 users in about a 4.5 month period.
Wow.
So you could see that the hockey stick growth. So I read about it. I never thought I would see it, but yeah, it went like this, and then it shot up. We were the featured startup on by Amazon Web Services. We were one of the clients, but we were one of their stories they ran with. We did a lot of publicity. Went on CNBC, went on Bloomberg, had interviews all over the place, and then that helped the scale. And then that's how I saw this is what I want to do. I want to help companies hit that hockey stick growth. I want to be able to be part of that story. We would be kind of writing content that people are interested about, even if the content was as dry as tech, or in that place when people didn't understand what is the cloud, what SaaS was. It was a new thing for many people then, but now we're still doing that, helping people tell that story about why their product, their service matters. And that's kind of where that simultaneous time of working in a role and then creating an agency to support that growth.
Yeah. What I can understand from that is what I can relate to is the fact that previously I think tech companies or tech products didn't really require PR or marketing the same way that they do now. Because in this day and age where everything needs to be packaged and presented in a certain way, I think that's where the PR marketing, even for something as dry as you said, as for cloud marketing or for email, for emails, is all of it needs to be packaged in a certain way and presented to the consumers in a certain way. And another point that I realized was that it all ties in together, doesn't it? Your experience as being somewhat of a generalist of managing all of those different dishes in the air, that kind of tied up into this, because it doesn't matter now whether you're thrown into the tech industry or you're thrown into product launches or you're thrown into a media campaign. As far as your skill set of presenting the product is concerned and using your the avenues that you use, the skill set that you have, leveraging that, you can basically transfer that from one industry to another and basically scale it.
Yeah.
For your and that is, I believe, where BEBOP would also come in, that you make tailor-made solutions for different clients from different industries, don't you?
Yeah, that's correct. So I think I think you got it spot on. That is, if anything, that I would say for any listener or if any young people to take from this is that you need to, with the advent of AI, with ever-growing technology, that new things coming out every day, whatever that I think statistically the jobs of the future have 50 to 60% of the jobs of the future have not been invented yet. So the goal of what you need to do right now is not necessarily to do unless you know this is a industry you're in. But even then, you should be able to be flexible enough to go with the flow, because a lot of jobs are not going to be existing because of AI. But yet at the same time, a lot of jobs will be created because of AI. So it's a necessity to be ready to be able to jump into the deep end and then manage that process. I think that would be invaluable for people moving forward.
Yeah, and this is something I mentioned in a previous podcast episode as well, for the younger lot, especially people who are either in uni at the moment or doing their degrees, or they're just finishing high school and getting into the industry. People, like we said, are a product of their times. And unfortunately, the professionals of tomorrow are going to have to be a product of their times.
Yep.
And one of the biggest reality of their times is going to be the advancement of AI in all industries.
Right.
So what they're going to have to realize is that, I've said this before, I don't want to freak people out, but I've said this before, that the relevance of formal degrees is going to go, it's already gone down a hefty amount and is going to go down into the ground within the next 10 years. It's going to be more important about the skill set that you have acquired and the work that you can do, how well you can do it.
Yep.
Because with the internet and with all of these certifications now, with AI and all of these learning platforms, why is there such an uptick of people offering courses online for a special skill set? It's because people have realized that what's the final aim of getting a uni degree? To get a job, right?
Yep.
To get a career, to build a career so that you can sustain yourself and your life, right?
Yeah, correct.
Now, if the end goal is to make money, and you can do that by learning a specific set of skills that you can maybe learn in 6 months and then just keep on perfecting them over the next 4 or 5 years and make something of yourself, why would anybody spend the amount of time and money required to go to a formal university, do a degree, develop a network, get into a professional pathway, and then make something of themselves?
But you're a civil engineer, so you have to go through that. So I would agree to that to an extent where yes, there is a future that has not been created yet. And if right now you could take a skill set that could set you up for that, I don't necessarily think that a degree would count. But that I also on the other hand, university is a part of growing up. It's a part of maturing. It's an experience. It is also a network. My alumni, I managed to have my first alumni event this past July when I went back to Singapore. I didn't think that was important or necessary, but it is. It is about who you know, not only what you know. So I would say it's a bit of both. I won't say that you would want to entirely not have that collegiate experience, but maybe not 4 years, 2.5, just like me, maybe a little bit less, but definitely worth some of that time to grow up, to mature. But then at the same time, you can take up courses or classes. Good example, I'm going to shout out to Le Wagon. So they are based headquartered in Paris. They have a branch that recently launched here in Sydney. They allow you to have a coding or data analyst a course that you go through for, I think, 10 weeks. And then after that, you pretty much certified in that role. And they have a placement rate of 90+% into jobs within 6 months after that. So you could do that and immediately have a new career. And they had people who were bartenders who then became coders,
right?
Or used to do perfume sales and then became a data analyst. So you don't necessarily have to find the job of the future if you're willing to invest in yourself.
Yeah. Another thing, like you said, it's the gatekeepers are gone. Like previously with Ivy League schools or all of these big prep schools or the elite club, that's gone now. So basically, I mean, it's there if you want to do, if it depends what industry you're in largely. But the point is that you are no longer dependent on having an Ivy League tech degree to have the same set of skills that are offered in the market. You can very well go to Microsoft certifications, Amazon certifications, Cisco certifications, and you can be as good in terms of skill set as anybody else on the market.
Yeah.
And then the only thing that's dividing you from the elites is basically how much you're willing to drive.
Actually, I would say it's branding, right? It's
branding.
That's what's left for the school. I won't go out and say that there's no value there, but it's just that it's a form of security or comfort for the person with the degree and for the company that's hiring. If I hire someone that comes with this branding, they should be better than someone who has no branding. But reality is that it doesn't necessarily matter in, let's say, the tech industry. It wouldn't. You're a Stanford grad, sure. Can you solve this problem? You can't. But this guy who did online DeVry or online University of Phoenix online, he can. You know what? That's
what
the guy I'll hire.
Yeah, 100%. And I think my final takeaway from that would be that, like you said, it lies somewhere in the middle. The truth lies somewhere in the middle. So you need, at this specific point in time, maybe the university degrees have not lost their relevance as yet. So you do a university degree, but always remember that you will have to upskill yourself for sure.
Yes.
3 or 4 times
definitely
throughout your career. To keep yourself relevant.
Yeah, I'm a prime example of that. I think I did a count recently. I've been fired 5-6 times in my career.
There you go.
That's just officially fired. If as a consultant, I've been dropped from campaigns countless times. And life lesson from that is you must have more than one skill set. You must have more than one revenue stream, one income stream. You can't have that. And now after COVID, after this whole work from home thing, hey, I would respect those who have a side hustle, because you never know what happened to your main hustle. So everything else you have to work something else in case the main thing doesn't work in that backup. So can't go down the same path the whole time. So yeah.
So while we're on that subject, when you mentioned the certifications, you're obviously somebody who has a keen insight into the industry. If somebody new is entering into the market, or somebody is coming up from overseas, they have a tech degree, because I know this is true for a lot of people coming over from South Asia. That's my own background, that they have done formal degrees from university and colleges in their countries, and they are they are qualified either tech engineers or tech workers. But once they arrive over here, either their degree or their qualification is not accepted by the Australian standards. So they know how to do the work, but their degree isn't accepted. So in that case, the best thing for them to do is to have some kind of certification that is then that makes them employable, right? So based on your insights, can you just name drop a few certifications or a few programs within your domain that can help people make them high value candidates?
I think the easiest one in digital marketing and search engine optimization, inbound marketing, I think you can look up HubSpot. It is a free academy that you can sign up to. Really good instructors that teach it. It's online course. Go through the material, complete the test, and then you get a certificate at the end of the day, which gives you a bit more leg up. As in, it's not a formal course. It's something that you can do on the side. It does help and puts a stamp on, at least you understand the fundamentals of that. And there are multiple levels to each of those certificates that you can get. So I would say that's probably one real good one. I think if you're looking, and we can spend all day talking about all the different names, but look up Academy XI. They are based in, I think, Sydney as well as Melbourne. They do more like, design thinking, data analysis as well. Last one I will drop is for the younger folks, look up Early Works. So that's also a way for you to learn or get your foot into the industry, because they also put you through a bit of an acceleration program on the personal development, and that pretty much sets you up ready to take on sales jobs in tech and so on. I think there was a recent story about how they had a fresh grad who went through their program, was able to get a 6-figure job out of school kind of type of deal.
Right. So that's definitely something that any younger person entering into the market can keep their eye on. I'll post a link to all of the certifications that Peter mentioned here. I'll put them in the description for this video. Do check it out. And this is an advice that I generally give to all people who are entering into uni. I have a few younger cousins of mine who even ask me what course should we go for? What are the prospects of anything? And to be honest, with seeing the way the industry is going, sometimes I honestly do not know how to answer, So the best advice that I can give is just make yourself resilient to change, make yourself as adaptable as you can, and put yourself into maybe a position that is kind of future-proof in a way for the shorter term. Develop a skill set that you can build on.
Yeah.
So that is where all of these certifications come in.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So now back to your personal story, right? At this point, you've now you're in Australia. You're working for that consulting firm. Are you still working with that firm at the moment, or have you completely transitioned to BEBOP full time?
BEBOP is something I co-founded, so that's kind of always a side hustle thing. That's a main hustle from time to time, depending if I have roles that I take up with other companies. So I was in Singapore. Then I went to when I worked for Drop My Site, which became Dropsuite. I just want to add this, that the reason why that my excitement about that company also is because I was part of that journey, not just from 0 to 525,000 users, but also 0 to IPO. So I was able to see this is something that a tech company is able to do, to not just hit the growth, but hit growth onto the point where it comes up to an exit, a phenomenal exit for the company. And I was an early employee in that, and I'm that's what I want to be, to see companies grow, to scale, to tell the stories that help them get from 0 to 100. So from there, I moved on to Hong Kong. I worked in, I skipped a few things there, but in Hong Kong, worked on a company called Campfire. This is a co-learning, co-working, is a collaborative, I'm missing out something, co-learning, co-working, and co-living, that's right. So a provider, so basically a play on real estate. So now you're no longer just owning a place and then renting it out, but you're breaking out smaller pieces and having people kind of be part of it. This was during the heydays of where WeWork was, before it became what it is now, where it was still at the height of it all. We had a model to replicate that, but
in a different way.
More different. Our hope is to create each site to be industry specific. So there was a site for tech, a site for fashion, a site for restaurants, a site for content creators, and we were, I think, about almost 25 or almost 30 sites at the height of it all. This is 2019 in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in many parts of Australia, and in the UK. So things were going swimmingly then. And that was kind of I was the CMO and then became the general manager for Singapore. So in Singapore, we had leased a 16-story building with a day pool upstairs. That was going to be a club. There was going to be a restaurant. There'll be a gym. There'll be everything. I was wow, this is everything we want to do. And then 2019, guess what happened in 2019? So Hong Kong had their protests. COVID hit, and then kind of like things kind of went awry, right? Nothing else you can control. This is a black swan event. Couldn't get there. People didn't want to, can't leave the house, can't go to the office. Things kind of went poorly, and that was that. And that was so now in roundabout story, we are looking at Australia. So at that point, I had my wife, having 2 kids. We're like, yeah, this is probably a good time to find a place where the rat race is not what we are used to. Something that's a little bit more open. We have some more space, a little more liberal like take to a lot of the situations which Asian countries were no, my word is law. This is how we're going to do things. So nothing wrong with that. Just pointing out that there are different strokes of different folks, and that Australia was the one that appealed to us the most, despite we have never worked here, never studied here. We've visited a couple of times, but never really had that. But we always felt this is where we want to see our life moving forward. And 2020, we got to move here, and ever since then, we are living happily here in Australia.
I have a thought about that. When a lot of people like yourself are considering about where to move, I had to go through the same choice process you had as well. Why do people move to places like Canada or Australia, or back in like 300 years ago, why were people moving in mass to the United States from Europe?
Yeah,
I think the reason is that all of these places that these were places where a multicultural community was growing. Okay, now I'm just to clarify, I'm not trying to erase the history of the indigenous people in all of these areas. That was a complete atrocity, that was complete injustice, and it's something that should not have happened to anyone in Canada or the US indigenous people or the Australian indigenous people. Just clarifying that, but only in terms of people who were immigrating to these countries. I think the reason why people immigrate to these countries is because, like one point is, I said, the diversity of the multiculturalism that opens up a lot of avenues and opportunities. And because these societies are, like, even if you look at the Australian society, it's a society that is still in the very infancy of its growth, in the infancy of its multicultural growth. The way Australia is expanding and the way they're trying to build this country to become a much bigger player on the global stage. Therein is the opportunity to build something for yourself, leveraging your own experience coming from outside and building something over here. Plus, as you said, like a more liberal, a more eased up society on where the state sanctions on people and people's liberties are not that harsh. These countries, in order to expand, they have to provide, the governments and the state has to provide a conducive environment for that to happen. And that is why a lot of people then prefer to come to these countries, as opposed to places where, like in Hong Kong, or like even in my country of Pakistan, like where there are a lot of state sanctions on what can and cannot be done.
Yeah,
it might be a number of different. It might be state sanctions. It might be corruption. It might be political instability. It might be a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But I believe this is the reason why a lot of people prefer to come to these countries rather than go to others.
I think for many people, and I would say one of those, is that Australia definitely is a more is seen in our parts of the world as like a place where you can live a lot, you can expand, you can grow. Whereas like what most Asian countries, what they can promise you is wealth.
Yep.
We are talking about not just growth in money, but like mental health, like mind space, like being able to have that freedom to have your control of time. Like someone reminded me that there is an actual word in Japanese which I don't know well enough, of dying at your desk is an actual term.
Really?
Yes. So you work literally to death.
To death.
And that is a word that happens enough that is an issue. So nobody died at their desk here. I don't know of, but nobody told me. But it is definitely, you can see in the work-life balance, the culture, the people's take time to work hard, because they realize when it comes time to switch off, I'm out. I gotta go. There is the great outdoors calling me. There is the pub that's calling me. The friends, family. I have a life to live. That work-life balance is something that we, before we came, we thought that was great. And then when we have moved here, I'm like, yeah, this is what we want to be. This is where we wanted to.
Yeah. And especially in all of the biggest cities, Sydney and Melbourne, Brisbane, etc. The good thing that I love about living here is that you go out on the street, you will see a multitude of different nationalities, people from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, all different kinds of languages you get to hear over here. And the best part is, you look at anybody, you will not be able to tell whether somebody is an immigrant or somebody was born Australian or somebody is a citizen or on a student visa or anything.
Yeah.
It all just amalgamates together, doesn't it? And I just love that. I just love that about Australia in general.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So coming back to your story, okay. So at this point, you wanted a place to settle down. You wanted a more stable place to live for your family, for your kids, and you've just continued living in Sydney ever since. Was Sydney the first city that you came to?
No, and we were looking at Melbourne.
Okay.
Yeah, so beautiful place, great city. We've visited a couple of times, but it was a little bit difficult to find work for my wife. Her work is in banks, so there weren't that many options for her. So we moved here. I'm in tech. I can work wherever. This once again, this is circa 2020 during pandemic. We're all working from home. So I was doing digital campaigns, marketing campaigns from my living room, my bedroom / office, and that's kind of like how. So yeah, that's how Sydney. But Sydney we came here for our honeymoon. We loved it. It was a great vibe. We enjoyed the life, and we said, hey, why don't we give it a try? And well, 3 years in, I don't know. I don't think we're leaving. It's hard. Sydney has got us.
Sydney's got us. I said this in a previous episode as well. It's a very difficult city not to love. It's got its sharp edges. It's got its bad parts like every other city. But I love the fast-paced metropolitan vibe of Sydney. It's
So when we left Singapore, the first place we moved to was Chatswood, and then we're like, we are literally 5 minutes from the train. I'm like, it's like as if we didn't leave Singapore. It was like, it's exactly like the same. High-rise buildings, apartments. I'm like, wow, did we go anywhere? We just
yeah. But with Sydney and with any other major Australian city, in Australia in general, what I love is that even if you're living in a place like Chatswood, within 30 minutes you can be in a national park.
Yeah. Exactly.
Within 30 minutes. You can be at a beach. You can be hiking somewhere.
Yeah.
You can have all sorts of experiences. So that's something I really love.
Yeah. That is very hard to find and amazing to be part of. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So tell me more about the work that BEBOP's doing at the moment. What kind of clients do you people have on? And more importantly, in order to help somebody who might be listening, who has started up a business for themselves, a small business, and considering how important now, even post-COVID, how important it is for businesses to have a digital footprint and to capture the target audience that they want, with so much competition out there these days, especially in the digital marketing. What would your advice be to people? What are the best practices they can follow? Just to start off with.
Okay, so a lot of questions there, but first things first. So my agency is BEBOP Asia, so BEBOP.Asia. We are a digital PR and marketing agency that is headquartered in Singapore, but we have a footprint across Southeast Asia and now in Australia and New Zealand. So we work with clients that are typically in tech, from ideation stage all the way up to Series C or Series D. We've helped companies that are unicorns and companies that are upcoming, and we're always looking for a good story to tell, good story to sell, and help them get into the what we'd say hit the higher notes of marketing, or punch above their weight class, because in days past, digital marketing has been reserved for people with a lot of money. VCs of the last 10 years would tell you most of the money that they have given to startups have gone directly into Facebook, Google ads. That's all there is. And that was what people thought. If I have X amount of dollars, I will pump into a campaign and then I will win. Which, fair enough, if you have enough money, you will. Like I worked on a HSBC campaign, this was a while back. They had $250,000 every quarter to throw onto keywords, to buy keywords. If you have that kind of money, you will win because you will have repetition. But the problem is, once you turn off the tap, that's it, you're done. There is no more traffic. Your website dries up, your leads dry up. So what I would say, what we do now is that we're trying to find a more permanent, sustainable way that keeps it possible for your brand, your company to stay in top of mind and in search. So this is, I just recently shared on what we call instant credibility, where you can instantly be seen as credible. And that is what we're trying to put out there. Disclaimer, you can have 2 out of 3 things in everything in life: cheap, fast, good. Choose 2. So if you choose fast, which is instant, it's one or the other, good or cheap. So that's the trade-off. But what you want here is to have fast and good reputation. And why does credibility matter? So here are the few numbers that I remember I'm going to drop right now without looking at my own paper. First, credibility matters because 91% of people buy things only after doing their own research. When you say, hey, why don't you Google it? I would say that's kind of even low. I thought it would be even higher, but 91% of people would only buy items after doing their own research. 83% of those would believe the recommendations of people that they trust, that they know, that they are friends of. They're like, oh, they bought it, I think they should be worth buying. 67% of people will trust online opinions even by people who don't matter to them, that they have never heard of. So imagine this in your own experience. When you're buying something online and there are a million competitors out there doing the exact same thing, what is the first thing you would do? You will Google it.
Yep.
And then you will read the reviews. And would you read beyond the first page, second page? Probably not. And so that's what we are trying to do for brands. Put a possibility for you to be credible in that space when you look for them online and you get seen. So how does this translate into what we do? Is one, that is what we call search engine optimization, which I was supposed to explain earlier. So search engine optimization is your ability to rank for certain keywords that matter to you, and you would show up on page 1. And best of all, first link. Underneath the ads, underneath the promo places where people pay for it, you type the word that your company is in, and then your name shows up.
Yep.
That immediately will be seen. Oh, wow, you must be doing something right. Your keywords for this is that. So that is one of the key things that we do. How do we achieve that? I'll get to the wrap. Is in one of the things we do, besides fixing your website, talk about your keywords, we rank them well, or we try to fill in your metadata. But where we find that easiest way to get through is, imagine right now your brand was mentioned by the AFR, the Australian, positively, of course. Like, they reviewed your survey and said, the AFR believe your client or this brand is really the best of its kind. It's a state-of-the-art technology. You should look at it. That company, the media company, has millions of views. They would already rank you higher. If they give you a backlink, that then leads back to your site. You have millions of followers, millions of eyeballs that will click, that will visit you. That immediately, one, gives you traffic. But more than that, lets you be instantly credible. That's kind of like, a long way of saying is we want to make it possible for people, your target consumer and customers, to find you and see you in the right places that makes them believe that you are worthwhile. So that's the gist of what we do and how companies can stand out.
Right. So based on what you just said, again, so if somebody is new to the game and they're trying to build a credible market name for themselves, like you said, the instant credibility for themselves, the best thing that they can then focus on is search engine optimization for themselves.
Yes.
Get yourself somewhere on the top of the list around the Google searches, and maybe gather as much positive reviews and exposure in the media as possible.
Yes.
That would be the gist of it.
The key of the game is backlinks. So you want a website to link to your business, and the more of those links that you have, the better that Google recognize you as an expert in that keyword that you have. And more than that is that you want websites or businesses that have what we call high domain authority. They will rank your, Google ranks your website out of 100. The higher you are means the more credible you are, and more likely that they are a source of information that is trustworthy and credible. So therefore, if you are placed in a place like the top tier media and they link back to you, that is gold. But you don't always start with gold. You start with whatever pebbles, whatever silver you can, and that's where you start having backlinks in as many websites with, as long as the eyeballs, they're linking back to you, the more you have, that would matter. Higher quality, of course, is the best, but if you don't have quality, you can always work with quantity.
Like it's an ongoing process,
oh,
right?
For sure.
Yeah. Like you start attracting some eyeballs, and in the meantime, you start building on that. You start improving your own processes and improving your brand image and your product quality, and things grow concurrently.
Yeah, sure.
Things grow together.
Another nugget of wisdom here is how does digital marketing or how does PR kind of work towards this goal? Is that first, according to the Content Marketing Institute, 80% of business decision makers would rather receive company information through a series of articles versus an advertisement. I'm not saying advertisements don't work, but if you want people in decision-making, places to make the call, they rather receive the information in a editorial, non-biased format. Because we are all media savvy to some extent. When there's an advertisement, you know it's an ad. You don't click it or you kind of like brush by it. But if it seems to be an editorial, which means non-biased, non-paid, chances are higher. Next, content marketing report, chief marketer report also said that the fastest way to move your leads through the sales funnel is through articles and blogs. The same thing. People rather read that than get through ads. And the last thing for millennials, which I believe we might be, I'm not sure how you are, but I am a older millennial, is that HubSpot has said that millennials are 247% more easily influenced by, again, articles, blogs, social media. So this is what we do, is to help people make that decision, to help them see their brand in places where they are having a real sway. And that is how we give them instant credibility. So companies that are starting, definitely brush up on your SEO, definitely engage with the media. I think those are the two, tips that I can give away for free today.
Like you said, millennials now all over the world are within the economic driver's seat at the moment, right? The millennial generation is what is driving spending trends, because they are the generation which are within the spending driver's seat, right? At the same time, you also have the Gen Zers who are now slowly making their way into the spending market. They now have disposable income. They're now starting to earn for the first time in their lives. And obviously the way you approach or advertise to Gen Z or what they connect with is very different to what millennials connect with. So based on your insights, how do you see the market trends changing for the same product that might be advertised to a millennial versus to a Gen Z?
Well, what I learned in my MBA is the answer to everything is 2 words. It depends. Everything is dependent on what the product is, what industry it is, and how, you want to get out to the audience. But I would say a general rule of thumb is that it's about channels. It's about where do you find your audience. I can't say to the content of it because it varies from things to things, but what it would mean is that where your audience is where you need to be marketed to. So I would say that millennials are still, to a certain extent, older ones like me, Instagram, Facebook, even to some extent, traditional media. I think that's kind of like a probably possible to kind of get there for that slightly older generation. But for the younger ones, their news is coming no longer from directly from source. They will be seeing their information from TikTok. They'll be getting it from communities like Discord. So you need to find out where they are and then work that into work your message there. It could be similar messages, but because of the platform you're in, it has to be tweaked very clearly. So the same product could have 2 audiences, but you have to sell it slightly different from the audience that they are going to be consuming, depending on where they are. So one more thing on that is probably a bit more long form, more blog types for the older millennials. Short form videos, sound bites, something quick and easy. So when I was working at Emanate, which is one of my jobs when I was here, was a blockchain music streaming service. So they are like Spotify, but with tokens. So effectively the same thing, but you're focusing on electronic and hip-hop music. And in that world, that's where we spend a lot of time doing TikTok videos. We were able to have millions of views for our videos, which were really small, very short, very quick, snack, catchy. But that same content I would never put on Facebook. I'll never put on another platform because it will confuse the audience. They won't understand. But the same message is there. So the similar ones, then we would do more long form videos, interview, a podcast like this, explain what that is, because that's what the audience is looking for. So
like you said, it depends.
Yeah.
So basically for the target audience, what I understood out of that is that you have to identify the channel through which they get most of their information from, and you just need to tap that channel in the proper way.
Yeah, in the proper way.
Interesting. Another question that came to my mind was, with the advancement in AI and with all of, I've seen ads for this, ever since I started the podcast, the amount of AI tools that are being advertised to me, it's gone through the roof, right?
Right.
An AI tool to write your video descriptions, an AI tool to optimize your video editing, an AI tool to create your thumbnails for your videos. And there's an AI tool for everything now, right?
Everything.
Now, in that foray, there's also an AI tool to create ad campaigns.
Yes.
There are also AI tools now to create advert images that would, like you give it a prompt
Yes.
for an image and it gives you 10 options from which to choose from, right? How do you see AI advancement impacting the digital marketing, the market itself?
Yeah. I think for me, as someone who has put in X amount of years in the industry, I would say I look forward to AI. AI is, at the moment, a tool. It is just like, imagine, I'm imagining and I'm saying that if you were back in school, during your math exam, were you allowed to use calculators?
And up to a certain point, no.
Certain point, yes, no, right?
Point, no.
But now calculators are part of that, because what does it end up allowing to do? You're no longer doing the mental calculation. You're doing the input of the formula. So my take is that this AI at this moment is taking away the things that you had to spend more time doing. That you previously, like you said, they generate the thumbnail for you. Great. Then I don't have to do it myself. It does script for you. It does ability to generate images for you. Great. I don't have to do it myself. But then you have to worry, then what can I do? And this is the point, is that you must be on top of it. You must be better. If your value was just to do that thing that a computer can do for you, sorry, buddy, you're getting replaced.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this new technology is coming, it's going to change the world, it's going to replace jobs. Yes. Then you got to be better than that. You got to find a new role of you being able to master it. AI is still a tool that needs to be told what to be done. Then you must be better at it than someone else or than itself.
Yep.
Like I was just shown, someone just showed me recently that when you go into Google's Bard, and it was actually a great workshop. Shout out to Leola Small of Small Marketing Agency. So she did a workshop talking about how you can create an entire keyword ad campaign without doing it yourself. Right into Bard, say, I am a marketer looking to market my agency. These are these things. Give me some ideas. And it churned out plenty of ideas and all that. But then she would point out, are you sure? I was like, what? You have to ask AI if they're sure? Yes, you do. You have to correct it. You have to tell it that it's wrong. Or if you spot a mistake. Because what AI is, at least in this generation, what it's doing is it's crawling the net for you, doing the work that you would have done in seconds instead of hours or days. But is it doing it right? Not sure. So the smart person is one who will tell you, okay, I'm training it to do better. I'm telling it what I want to do. So that's what AI is. AI is not going to, at the moment, it's not Skynet. It's not going to end the world. But it's going to make the most laborious tasks, the most repetitive tasks possible to be done, snap of fingers.
Yep. Yeah.
So embrace it. Be better than it. If not, it will replace you.
And like you said, at the moment, use it as a tool within your industry. Yeah. I guess. The roles that are most at risk because of AI, like you said, are the roles that were taking care of all those repetitive tasks that were like labor intensive. So yeah, I guess the most natural thing to do for people like that in that position is to cover your own vulnerability of being replaced, is try to, and this ties back into the previous point that I made, that you need to upskill yourself constantly. You know, if there's a new tool coming up, you need to be aware of it, be good at it, learn how to control it. And I guess in the next few years, in a lot of people's CVs and job applications, within their skill set, AI optimization is going to be right there in the bullet points. You know, AI optimization, how to use AI tools, etc., etc. This has been a very engaging talk, Peter. I loved getting the insights from the market. Just because, I mean, we could sit here talking about digital media for the whole day, just because of the format of the show. I normally always end asking a person, based on your whole life experience, you've lived in almost all different parts of the world. You've been exposed to so many different cultures. Your industry experience spans the width and breadth of everything that can be done in a professional realm and how to market it. Based on all of that, what is the one nugget of truth that life has taught you that you can pass on to any younger person who's starting off in your industry?
Negative truth?
Anything. It can be anything. You can do positives and negatives. Whatever.
Okay. So I would say what I've seen through my career and my life, the number one lesson in life is balance. There was a old movie in 1993 called Little Buddha, Bernardo Bertolucci. It's with Keanu Reeves. If you haven't seen it, it's beautiful, amazing. But what really kind of caught me at that time, and I was probably, I don't know, 10 years old when I saw it, or thereabouts, is that there was a lesson which was taught by Buddha, which is that he learned that if you tie a rope too loose, it wouldn't work. Or you tie the rope too tight, it will snap. The middle way. That's exactly it. And this is the number one lesson I learned in life, and why I'm here right now is looking for that balance. You have to work hard, but then you also have to play. You have to find that middle way, and it might not be easy. And I would say I'm struggling with it too, but I always constantly look back. I need to find where is that balance? Where is that path to enlightenment is to not have too much of something, not have too little of something. And that would be the only thing that I would want you to take away from this, is that don't go too hard, don't go too soft.
Yeah, just balance yourself throughout life.
Yeah.
Perfect. Excellent point to end the conversation on. Thank you so much for joining us, Peter. It was very insightful. Hopefully we can have you on again, for some added guidance to all the younger lot. And for everyone who has been enjoying this podcast, if you're enjoying the conversations, kindly hit that subscribe button. Also, all of these social media platforms where we upload all of our short form content, do check these out. The clips for this episode as well will be coming up there in the subsequent days. Until the next time, this has been Hussain. You have been watching In The Gap, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.